Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the installment of Scott's Selections here for Sunday, February 23rd. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We had a very solid day on Saturday as we ended up sweeping the board. We started out with Providence -2, which was available on Fox Bet at plus 100. They ended up winning by double digits. Then our second play of the day was on Oklahoma State -1, which was available on FanDuel at -115. They won by double digits. And then I gave out a personal play on my Twitter where I gave out Tyson Fury moneyline, which was available on Fox Bet at plus 100. He ended up winning in dominating fashion. Really just an easy 3-0 day, no drama at all. Everybody we took pretty much coasted from start to finish, and we ended up picking up a nice 3-0 day for plus 2.87 units. Very solid day, and we look to keep it rolling here on Sunday. Now, at first glance, looking at the card, I know a couple of games have not come out yet for lines in the NBA, but the card itself, really just not great. I mean, Sundays for college basketball usually are not, usually just a bunch of unknown teams. A lot of craziness, though, in college basketball. I know Baylor losing to Kansas wasn't that nuts because of the fact that both teams were in the top three, but San Diego State's no longer undefeated, and Gonzaga lost. And that probably means that teams like Dayton were the biggest winners as they will most likely move into the top three. But either or, college basketball is still nuts. And for the upcoming card, NBA, a couple of games are already up. There is one that's not available between the Celtics and the Lakers, so I can't really talk about that with no betting line. College basketball going to as well. But other than that, though, there is one play in particular that I do like for the play of the day, and it will be in a matchup in the XFL. We gave out an XFL play last week with the Renegades, and they were able to give us a win. But for today, we're actually going to be looking at the DC Defenders, and we like them -8.5 against the LA Wildcats, and that line is available at -8 at -110 on DraftKings, and that will be the play of the day. Now, a couple of reasons why I like the DC Defenders in this spot. First of all, they've been the best team in the entire league up to this point. I know that the Roughnecks are currently 3-0, and that PJ Walker has been the main name that people are talking about. Their offense is really good, I understand that. Their defense is not that great, but if you look at what DC's been doing, Cardell Jones has been great, Pemfrey's been great, the defense has been insane, and I actually think DC is the best team in the league by a decent margin. I expect to see the Roughnecks play against DC in the title game, but one thing that you have potentially noticed in upstart leagues, especially with the AAF and the XFL, is that there are some teams that are just significantly better than others, and they kind of just run away with the entire league. You saw it in the AAF, I believe it was with Orlando. I want to say that they were I forgot what they were. The Apollos, I believe? The Orlando Apollos? Does that sound right? I don't remember. Either way, they were undefeated, and they ended up winning the championship makeshift-wise after the league folded because they were so much better than everyone else. I really just think DC is so much better than everybody else in the league. I don't think it's really that close. DC, if you've looked at their first two performances, pretty solid, beat the Dragons in week 1. Then they absolutely demolished the Guardians with a 27-0 shutout last week. Their defense is absolutely ridiculous. Their offense with Cardell Jones has been fantastic, and even the receiving core with Ross and Tompkins have been solid as well. Scooby Wright expected to play, definitely an important piece to that linebacking core for DC. I personally have DC winning the championship at plus 600 preseason, and now they're currently available at roughly plus 200 to lift the trophy, which is the shortest odds on the entire field. But if you just compare the two teams, LA's been an absolute disaster. They're 0-2. They're the team that fired the defensive coordinator after week 1. Not exactly a good sign of things to come. Their starting quarterback is Josh Johnson, a longtime NFL journeyman. And even though he did play last week, he really did not look sharp. He's had some injury issues with his thigh. He was limited in practice all week, so he has not gotten a ton of reps. But at the same point, he ended up completing roughly 50% of his passes last week. He did have 2 touchdowns and no picks, but he wasn't really running around as much as he normally was, and he also missed a lot of wide-open receivers downfield for a lot of potential touchdowns, and that was against the Renegades, and the Renegades, as you might have seen them yesterday, really aren't that good. So I really just wasn't impressed by the Wildcats in that performance as they lost by 7. Elijah Hood's done absolutely nothing on the ground game. The only player worth talking about for LA offensively is wide receiver Nelson Spruce. He's actually been very good. But the LA Wildcats defense really not been great, giving up at least 25 points in each of the first 2 games. They don't really stop anybody. Their offense has been okay. I'd say not great. Plus, they also have a decent amount of injuries to talk about. Their backup quarterback, Knopf, is injured. He's probably not going to play. So if Johnson gets injured, they're really just screwed. Defensive back Harlan Miller is currently dealing with a thigh injury, and he has not practiced all week. Josh Johnson's limited, Elijah Hood's limited, and linebacker Will Smith is also limited. So they really just have a lot more injuries. DC's the better overall team, and they're the healthier overall team. I think this game could get ugly. I think LA should struggle to put points together. I think DC will be able to have some big plays against this very suspect LA Wildcats secondary, and I think you should see Cardell Jones try to throw the ball deep a couple of times to Rawson Tompkins for some big plays on offense. So for that reason, I personally think this game will be relatively low scoring, but I do think DC will win this game pretty easily. I think they'll win by double digits. But for that reason, it's also worth mentioning the line originally opened up at roughly 7.5, I believe. Let me just actually double check that for a second. The line opened up at 7.5, pushing 8 in some spots, and the line's gone up to 8.5. Decent amount of juice at the 8.5 on FanDuel at minus 115. So this line should probably go up to 9, but it is still available at minus 110 on DraftKings, and for that reason, that will be the play of the day. So the play of the day, once again, for Sunday, February 23rd, will be on the DC Defenders minus 8.5, and that line is available on DraftKings at minus 110. Now, for the leans on today's card, we're going to be looking at the NBA first. Couple of games to look into. I'm going to lean to the over in the Minnesota-Denver game. If you haven't noticed, Minnesota, they pretty much acknowledge the fact that their team is terrible, so all they do is shoot threes at almost every possession. All other games fly over. People haven't really caught on to it. I expect the total to keep climbing. Denver's kind of tricky when it comes to over-unders, but Minnesota has been so bad on defense that I feel like you kind of have to blindly bet their games. If you look at Minnesota recently, first of all, for the season, they're giving up 116 points per game, but if you've actually looked at each of their last, I gotta actually break this down, because Minnesota's games have gone into the 240s so frequently, it's actually kind of mind-blowing. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of their last 5 games have totaled at least 140, I believe 144 points. I mean, all their games end up they always give up 120 plus points, 130 plus points. They're just really awful defensively. They're willing to go up and down the court every time, exchanging threes, don't play any defense. I think Denver should probably get into the 120s. I think this game should go over. I'll lean to the over on that one. Other than that, I'm going to lean to Washington -1 against Chicago. I told all of you a couple days ago, Chicago's clearly tanking, and they lost again to the Suns yesterday, and now they have to play the second end of a back-to-back against a Wizards team that isn't that good per se, but they're still in the playoff hunt potentially for an 8 seed, and you know Beal is still playing at a really high level. Chicago's just bad. I mean, I've mentioned it before, I'll probably be fading them for almost the entire second half of the year. This team is just not trying to win, and I'll lean to the Wizards because I think they care about the game more. Other than that, not really interested. Detroit, I think, is tanking, but Portland's not good without Lillard. I'll probably lean to Portland. I'm not going to touch it, though. I'll pass on that. And for New Orleans and Golden State, I mean, of course, naturally, I'll lean to New Orleans, but I don't really have many thoughts on that game in particular. 9's a little bit too much for a New Orleans team that plays virtually no defense, but they definitely should be able to score at least 120 to 130 points against Golden State. So for me, I'll lean to the Pelicans there very hesitantly, but overall, those are my thoughts on the NBA card. Now, looking at college basketball, a lot of games, but not many good ones. You have Penn State playing in an early game against Indiana. Not really looking into that one. I mean, Indiana, I guess, makes sense, but just because of the fact that they're roughly pick 'em or -1 and they're unranked against a number 9 team in the country off a home loss to Illinois. But I'm not going to touch that game. Not really interested at all. The St. John's-Seton Hall game, no interest. St. John's, even though they lose games, they keep games close. They play a very unique type of press defense. I wouldn't be surprised to see St. John's keep it close for roughly a half before Seton Hall potentially blows it open in the second half. So I'm probably going to pass on that one. I'm going to lean to Ohio State, though, minus the 2.5 against Maryland. Even though Maryland has been a very solid team, Ohio State has been very solid at home, and they should be able to get themselves a nice boost from the crowd against a top 10 opponent. So I'll lean to Ohio State minus the 2.5 there. Other than that, though, Butler and Creighton, not many thoughts. I'll pass. But yeah, pretty much my main lean is going to be on Ohio State minus 2.5. And also looking at the rest of the card, I will also lean to Minnesota to get the job done at Northwestern, as they are laying 3.5. Minnesota's terrible. I understand that. They're on a losing streak, and I believe they've lost 3 or 4 straight. Northwestern's lost 10 straight games. This team is brutal. If you've watched them play, this team just can't score. It's really painful to watch. This game will be low scoring. I'll lean to the under. I think first team to 60 wins. I know the total's at 133, but I really think that total's too high, and I think Minnesota should be able to do enough with I just think they have better players. It's really not much else to explain there. I'll lean to Minnesota. I think they'll win that game somewhere in the realm of 60-something to 50-something. I'm going to lean to the under, and I'll lean to Minnesota as well. Now, for tennis, I know some people have asked for tennis and NHL leans to come back into the videos, and I originally cut them out because I thought the videos were getting a bit too long, but I can bring them back in. And for the NHL, a couple of games to look at, nothing really substantial. I'm looking at St. Louis at minus 110. I'm tempted by that. I know they've struggled since the All-Star break, but St. Louis is just such a better team than Minnesota, so I'll lean to St. Louis on that one, minus the 110. Other than that, lean to the Islanders. I know they're laying 200. San Jose played yesterday against the Rangers. They lost, playing the second end of a back-to-back. Islanders are in the thick of a playoff hunt. A lot of teams breathing down their neck, and they need these 2 points. Plus, it's going to be a home game for the Islanders. They play better at home. But San Jose is also just brutally injured. Couture's out, Carlson's out, Hurdle's out. Pretty much the whole team's dead. So for me, I'll lean to the Islanders on that one as well. That's pretty much my thoughts on the NHL. And for tennis, I have absolutely nothing. You have a couple of games going on, a small lean to Opelka money line, but that's mostly just for a plus 180, plus 175, just value bet. In a game between, or in a match between Opelka and Raonic, where both players should hold serve pretty much automatically, because both of them are just going to bomb aces and nobody's going to have any answers, you might as well take the underdog in some tie breaks, and hopefully one of them can break through. So lean to Opelka plus the 170, 180, whatever line you can get there. But the play of the day, once again, is going to be on the DC Defenders minus 8.5. And that line is available on DraftKings at minus 110. That's going to be the installment of Scott Selections here for Sunday, February 23rd. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.